Evening. This is Political Forum, November 12th. We welcome today our guest, Alderman Will Burns of the 4th Ward. Thank you for appearing on Political Forum today, Alderman Burns.
Thank you, Dartesia, for having me on.
I'm Dartesia Pitts. I'm a board member here at CAN TV. This is a live, interactive program brought to you as a community service from CAN TV. So I encourage you to call in at the number you see below, 312-738-1060, and join in on our conversation today with Alderman Burns. Alderman, this is not the first time that I've had the opportunity to interview you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Glad
Absolutely.
to be back.
And thank you for coming back. CAN TV loves you. And I'm also a resident of your ward, so this is always a lot of fun for me.
Well, we got you the garbage cans or whatever you need, sidewalk fixed, tree removed, we got it taken care of.
Can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself? Give them a little background of who you are.
My name is Will Burns. I'm the Alderman of the 4th Ward. I was elected in 2011. Before that, I served in the Illinois House of Representatives for 2 terms, and before that, worked for people like Barack Obama and former Senate President Emil Jones, and a stint at the Chicago Urban League. I got my college degree from the University of Chicago and also have a master's degree from there as well.
All right, so you are, for the most part, an honorary native Hyde Parker. For
the most part, an honorary native Hyde Parker. I like the way you put that.
That's good. Hey, University of Chicago, absolutely. So, let's begin today by letting the people know where are the boundaries of your ward.
It's kind of complicated. So the 2011 remap basically extended the 4th Ward north in a north direction. So I lost a lot of what's called East Hyde Park, sort of east of Lake Park Avenue, from 53rd Street up to 49th Street. That's now in the 5th Ward. I lost a lot of Central Hyde Park, and then my ward boundaries extend north now along the lakefront all the way to Jackson Boulevard.
It looks like your ward has grown. Is that true, or is it just from the image?
It's a longer, thinner ward,
Okay.
and part of the reason why is that the city of Chicago lost 180,000 African Americans between the 2000 to 2010 census, and so the Black Caucus made a decision that we were going to fight for 18 majority-minority African American wards, which meant that my ward had to move further north, and I had to shed population to the south, so that African American wards could gain population and we could have 18 majority-minority African American wards.
Okay. Well, before I get an opportunity to go into what's going on in your ward in particular, let's talk about what's going on via, the city overall. There's been a recent social impact investment in early childhood. Can you tell us what that means?
Well, basically, the mayor and the city council are investing millions of dollars to make sure that low-income 4-year-olds have access to early childhood education. And when you look at investments that have the biggest payoff for our community, it's the investment in early childhood education. If you make sure that kids have the knowledge they need to succeed in a very early age, they don't start school behind the 8 ball. And so many of our kids, especially when they're low income, are at a disadvantage. They hear fewer words at home. They're not read to as often. They watch more television. Their diets are not as good as folks who are middle class. And so early childhood education really helps to level the playing field. And so it's a really critical investment. I was happy to support the bill.
That sounds like a good plan. And since we're already on that subject, let's hit it early. What's going on with the school closure of Dyett High School in your ward, or in our ward?
In our ward, since you live there too.
Yes.
So in 2011, the Chicago Board of Education decided to phase out Dyett High School, meaning that they would no longer accept freshmen, and then each year there would be fewer students in the school. Dyett was expected to close in 2015, and I think the one thing that groups throughout Bronzeville agreed on was that Dyett has to stay open. So we may have differences of opinion about what Dyett should become in the future, but whether you're part of the Bronzeville Community Action Council or the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, everybody wanted to see Dyett stay open, and so as a consequence, of really a concerted effort from our neighborhood, the Board of Education has decided to reverse its decision and to have an RFP process wherein the board will determine the future of Dyett High School. So Dyett will be closed for 1 year, but it will open up in the fall of 2016. And I think the good thing about the RFP process is that, I think that there are institutions on the Mid-South Side that could create a high-quality, open enrollment grade high school. And the request for proposal allows those groups to come forward and offer their ideas on providing a high-quality education for our community.
Okay, so the governance overall of that particular school will change. The principal, the LSC.
Correct.
Okay.
But it will be a public school, and the members of the teachers will be members of the Chicago Teachers Union. Mm-hmm. It will be open enrollment. It will not be a charter school. It will not be an alternative school. And if you look in our community, there's a need for another high-quality neighborhood high school option. Kenwood Academy is a great high school. It's overcrowded, and that's because people are looking for great options. And I think if the board makes the right decision about the operator for Dyett and the program for Dyett, I think we could have another great high school for our community.
Okay. And by the time that it's going to close, all of the students would have been phased out.
Correct. There are 13 students who are still attending Dyett High School. The Board of Education has offered those kids the opportunity to go to other high schools, and those kids have decided to stay at Dyett. But after this last class graduates, Dyett will close for a year and then be reopened in 2016.
Okay. And there's something similar going on with Kenwood Academic Center.
Right. So the board in 2013 decided to phase out Cantor Middle School. So Cantor Middle School was one of the few middle schools we had in the city of Chicago. The sad fact was that a lot of parents decided not to use the school. It was underutilized, and so the board decided to close it. The solution that we came up with is to move the 7th and 8th grade academic center, which is currently inside Kenwood Academy, and move that to Cantor Middle School, just 100 feet away. So now the 7th and 8th graders who were in a high school have their own building, so they have enough space for that program to continue to grow, and we create another 250 slots at Kenwood Academy, which means that more families on the Mid-South Side will have access to a high-quality high school.
So the reshuffling really wasn't a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because you have a potential for a high-quality middle school coming to the Fourth Ward. Right,
and the opportunity for that middle school to grow over time.
Okay. We have a caller. Hi, caller.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question now. Governor-elect Rauner, I have a question for you, Alderman Burns. How do you think that he will affect Chicago, and specifically about minimum wage? I know that the Chicagoans are interested in minimum wage. Actually, in the voters also voted for an increase in minimum wage statewide. I know that Governor-elect Rauner's been on the fence. He says he's pro it, but he really hasn't been specific. So, what's your take on that?
Well, thank you, caller, for the question. I think the city of Chicago should move ahead with implementing its own minimum wage. I think waiting for the state to do that would be a mistake. Governor-elect Rauner has said that he supports an increase in the minimum wage at the state level, but tied to a host of other reforms, which he has not spelled out yet. So it sounds to me like it's a recipe for gridlock. Besides the fact the state minimum wage at $10.65 an hour, is not a sufficient wage for the city of Chicago. We have higher cost of living here, and if you adjusted $10.65 for inflation, for the cost of living in the city of Chicago, you would get to $13 an hour, which is what the mayor's ordinance calls for.
And after the federal government gets to your check, that $10.65 an hour shrinks very quickly.
Well, and the cost of housing, transportation. One study suggests that in order for a person to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the city of Chicago, they would need to make somewhere between $18 to $19 an hour. So even with a boost in the minimum wage, there are other income supports that we have to come up with to help moderate income people be able to afford living in the city of Chicago, and that includes affordable housing, earned income tax credit, and a host of other supports.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hi, yeah, I saw this event today. I watched the live stream talking about the Lucas Museum coming to Chicago, and I don't know if that's in your ward or not, but one interesting point that was brought up was the potential economic impact of building that closer to a different neighborhood instead of putting it on the lakefront. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that or on any potential big developments like that that could come into your ward.
Thanks. That's a great question. So I think we're at the very beginning of the process on the Lucas Museum, and there's a whole conversation that's happening around the museum campus. So as you know, you have Soldier Field, you have the Shed, Adler, Field museums, all sharing a very, Northerly Island, all sharing a very small space. And so the question is, how do you get people into the museum campus, out of the museum campus? How do you make sure that that museum campus interacts with the surrounding South Loop community? So there's a whole planning process around that. And with regards to the Lucas Museum, I think if it's on the lakefront, I think it'll have a positive economic impact because it will help create jobs on the Mid-South Side that are accessible to people who live on the South Side. I think the design is problematic. I think that there's a certain lack of humanity with the design, and I encourage those folks to go back to the drawing board and work on those designs. And there's some questions about green space and how that museum is going to interact with our public school system. But we're just at the beginning of that process.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if we touched on this when we were discussing the minimum wage. I know we just had the statewide referendum that was on the ballot, and it passed. And from my understanding, there are hearings this week in committee. What are the hearings about as it relates to the minimum wage?
So that's a great question. So first of all, in the city of Chicago, 88% of voters who came out to vote in November support a higher minimum wage, a $10 an hour state minimum wage. So I think that's significant. But there are a number of proposals around the minimum wage. There's one group that believes that the Chicago minimum wage should be close to the same as the state, at $10.65 an hour. And with no change in what's called the tip credit, which we can talk about a little bit later if you want to.
Okay. TIF?
TIP, the tip credit.
Got it.
If you're a waitress in a restaurant, the restaurant owner pays a portion of your hourly wage, and then you match the rest with tips.
Okay.
If you don't get enough tips, then the owner is responsible for the entire minimum wage. But it's a way to incentivize tipped workers to get tips.
Got it.
And so tipped workers want to hire, or they want to reduce the tip credit.
Okay.
And restaurant owners want to keep the tip credit, obviously.
Of course.
So that's one proposal, $10.65. There's another proposal that says $15 an hour, and there are other sort of elements of that proposal. And then there's the proposal I support, which is $13 an hour, which I feel is a more balanced approach between what the business community wants and what other advocates are pushing for.
Okay. If you're just now tuning in, you've tuned in to Political Forum. Today we have as our guest Alderman Will Burns of the 4th Ward. I encourage you to take advantage and call in and engage the alderman with conversation about what's going on in the city, and if you live in the ward, what's going on in the 4th Ward. Telephone number is at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so I saw a list of the questions, and one of them happens to be about a paid sick leave ordinance. Now, what is that, and what does it mean for your constituents?
Well, most of us, most middle-class people work in businesses where there's a sick leave policy. So you work a certain number of days, and you earn a sick day. If you are a minimum wage worker, or a low-income worker, typically you work in places that don't have a sick leave policy. And so what that means is that you lose your wages if you have to take care of a sick child or sick parent, or if you yourself are sick. So you have to make a decision. Do I take a pay cut because I'm ill and I need to go to the doctor, or do I go to work even though I'm ill and I shouldn't be there? And so this is really about leveling the playing field and providing a benefit to workers who've earned it. We're not saying give them a sick day for nothing. They have to earn it by working a certain number of hours. And then when they work those hours, they get the sick leave.
So it will be required under this ordinance.
Correct.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Laverne Smith. I live in Will Burns district. I'm very proud of all the work and all the different things he has done for us. But Will, I want to ask you, since they're putting all of this new stuff over there across the street, with LA Fitness, will we be getting, like a sit-down restaurant, a currency exchange? Do you know what kind of businesses they are going to bring to us?
Well, first of all, Ms. Smith, thank you for calling in. Look forward to seeing you soon. Ms. Smith lives in Lawless Gardens right behind my office and is a dear friend and supporter. She's referring to the Lake Meadow Shopping Plaza on the north side of 35th Street. And so the idea, Ms. Smith, is to bring in other restaurants and other uses to that shopping center that folks have been looking for in that part of the ward for a long time.
In Lake Meadows.
In Lake Meadows, correct.
Okay. All right.
So LA Fitness has moved in. They're the new anchor tenant in what used to be the Milwaukee Furniture place, and then a number of the tenants that have been there for a while are moving out. The owner is changing the facade, so it's going back to what it looked like in the 1950s with steel and glass, and it's really going to be a very exciting development.
What's funny is I grew up in the ward, so I remember when that area used to be Goldblatt's. So the fact that it's LA Fitness now, I'm like, whoa. But that's a good thing, and it's a great thing for the community.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Ms. Smith, for calling in, but I think that this is a perfect segue to talk about all the other great things that are going on in the 4th Ward. I know that she wanted to know about the sit-down restaurants that have come or that may come on 35th Street, but we have a lot that's going on 53rd and 51st Street. Alderman, can you just, it's so many, I'm just going to let you go for it.
So we're going through a bit of a renaissance, really on the Mid-South side. In Hyde Park, you have the Harper Court development, which is a commercial office tower leased by the University of Chicago with lots of restaurants and other retail. 2 blocks north of there's a new development under construction that'll have 180 units of housing. 20% of those will be reserved for affordable purposes, and along with 100,000 square feet of retail, and Whole Foods is the anchor tenant. So for many years, people in Hyde Park felt like we weren't getting our fair share, and now we're getting a Whole Foods along with other retailers. And then on 47th Street, we've got a Ross. We've got a real department store on 47th Street for the first time in many, many years. You mentioned Goldblatt's. I mean, it's like a new kind of Goldblatt's. And so and on 47th and Cottage Grove, you have the Shops and Lofts project where Walmart is the anchor tenant. You have 72 units of housing along with 50,000 square feet of retail on 47th and Cottage Grove. And that's a very exciting project that's really transformed that entire corner.
And we have Mariano's that's coming?
Mariano's is coming to 39th and King. So Miss Smith, you can just take a bus a few blocks south in a couple years and be able to go to the Mariano's at 39th and King Drive. That Mariano's is scheduled to be bigger than the one in the South Loop at 75,000 square feet. And, my thought, and Alderman Pat Dow, who's been supportive as well, is that Mariano's will help to catalyze economic development along Pershing Road, both to the west and to the east.
And in regards to all of the sit-down restaurants, of course. Oh, we have a caller. Before I even ask that question, caller, how you doing?
Hi, is this me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I had a question. Actually, 2 questions for Alderman. So first is about, I'd like to know the Alderman's thoughts on policing practices in the 4th Ward, particularly Hyde Park. I recently wrote to his office asking information about a gang database with the Chicago Police Department, and I didn't get a response. And then the second thing is the University of Chicago Police Department's transparency issues. I noticed that the Alderman wasn't present at the recent event concerning some transparency issues.
I was there. I was at the experimental station. So the caller is referring to the experimental station. There was a meeting there about University of Chicago policing practices. I attended the University of Chicago and know students when I was there 20 years ago who were racially profiled. There are 2 things. I think that the University of Chicago should be more forthcoming about their pattern and practices of stopping people and the rationale for why they stop them. There's a state law, Dartesia, that requires police departments to report on their traffic stops, who they stop, the race of the people in the car, the make, model, year of the car, and also whether or not a search was conducted or whether a ticket was issued. And all that data is reported to the Department of Transportation. I encourage those advocates to take a look at the traffic stops data as a way to gain some insight into the University of Chicago Police Department practices. In terms of the gang audit, I don't recall your letter, but I'm sure my office will work on that. I know the 2nd District is working very closely to make sure that we keep the number of homicides in the 4th Ward as close to 0 as possible. And so that means a really intensive effort to police areas where we know different crews are operating. They're not really gangs in the sense when I was growing up, when you had, the El Rukins and, these are
They're
small.
not organized.
They're not organized. They're smaller cliques, effectively, with very young and very dangerous people. And so the police have to make sure that to keep them under control.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Wilbur. We appreciate everything you did for us. And I wanted to tell you that I'm a member of the committee that Ms. Smith has. And I want to ask you, are you still willing to help us keep promises so that we can better do the safety of the area around Lawless Gardens to help these tenants improve the area so that we can be better residents for the new development that's coming into our area?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the things that, we need more than anything else is for citizens to call our office, to give us information. You can do it anonymously. If you don't feel comfortable calling 911, you can drop a note in an envelope to our office. You can send us an email. It's really information from citizens that we get to the commander that help to prevent drive-by shootings. There were some folks in Lawless Gardens that shared some very time-sensitive information with us. We got it to the commander, and it stopped a group of young men in a stolen car with guns who were on their way to shoot another group of young people. So we really need you to give us information, and we get it to the commander, and we get it to East Lake Management, and we get on top of it. Thanks so much for your call.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My question is, what is going to be done to be fixed the Sioux Desert epidemic in the south side of Chicago?
Well, I can't speak for the entire south side of Chicago. I will tell you that a couple of my colleagues are very excited about a Whole Foods moving to 63rd Street in Inglewood, which is a huge development. In the 4th Ward, Mariano's will be coming to 39th and King. A Walmart grocery store, 40,000 square foot grocery store, just opened up at 47th and Cottage Grove. And Whole Foods is coming to 51st and Lake Park. That development will be done January of 2016. So in the 4th Ward on the Mid-South Side, we are addressing the food desert issue, I think, pretty aggressively.
And I'm not sure, is Treasure Island in your 55th? Is that you or no? Is that
It
south
used
of
to be.
you?
It
Okay,
used to be. It's now in the 5th Ward.
And the new remap, when will the remap come into effect, come into play? Is it 2015?
So in the elections in February, you will be voting. The new map will be in effect.
Okay, that's good to know. There's also a brand new state-of-the-art Arts and Rec Center coming to the 4th Ward. Can you let us know about that?
Sure. So many of your viewers may know that there used to be a housing development called Ida B. Wells in Madden Park. Around 35th and Cottage Grove. And when those projects were demolished as a consequence of the plan for transformation, the old field house was also demolished. And there was a promise made to the residents of the Mid-South Side 15 years ago that they would get a new field house. So some 15 years later, the promises that were made to the community are finally being paid off through support from CHA, the City of Chicago, Community Builders, which is a non-for-profit developer. They're bringing New Markets tax credits. So we're going to build a $16.5 million facility. It'll have swimming pool, gym, fitness rooms, multi-purpose rooms, and it'll be managed by the Chicago Park District. So it'll be a level 1 field house on the Mid-South Side.
Well, that is very exciting, and I actually grew up in that area.
Okay.
So to see a $16 million project coming is awesome, just to know. just to know it's coming. But Alderman Burns, thank you for appearing on Political Forum, and thank you, the viewers, for your calls. Our telephone technician has been Omari. Thank you, Omari. Political Forum is brought to you as a community service by CAN TV. Please join us again for Political Forum next Wednesday at 7 p.m. when our guest will be 29th Ward Alderman Deborah Graham. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dartesia Pitts. This is Alderman Burns. Have a great evening.
Take care.